we needed to start washing off desks and chairs and such sort of on a daily basis. And then on Sunday, March 15th, as everybody heard from our Alberta government, classes were canceled indefinitely, and students were able to come in waves. They weren't allowed to all come in at once to pick up and retrieve some items. But other than that, we haven't had classes and people are practicing physical distance. So yeah, maybe that's where we can start our chat this afternoon. At Trombone in the time of quarantine, maybe I could ask you two how things started out and have been with the Calgary Philharmonic. And welcome.
Thanks, Nathan. Our experience was like so many other people where, all of a sudden the world shifted from situation normal, concerts going ahead, rehearsals and all of our regular gigs were happening. We had just finished a dress rehearsal for a screening of a movie, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. We had rehearsed it. Dress rehearsal was over. I was out then doing a school clinic that afternoon between the rehearsal and the performance, and got a text from one of my colleagues saying the word just came out that all gatherings of more than 250 people were hereby canceled till further notice. So we then got an official email about an hour later saying that all concerts were canceled until further notice. And that's kind of how it became real for us.
Wow.
Yeah, that was right on March 13th that all happened. And
right.
So, yeah, that in between a rehearsal and concert, I also teach, at the University of Calgary, and one of my students had gotten his recital in, one that had a senior recital scheduled a week or two before then, and there was one who was scheduled for on the 15th or 14th or 15th. Anyways, that early that next week, and of course that was the first day they canceled the university. So yeah, it's been a brave new world.
So what does that look like? I mean, I guess I mean, certainly we all know that things have changed. We're at home, we're staying safe, we're keeping distance. What does that look like for you? Whether that's on the teaching side of things, whether that's perhaps on the gigging side of things, practicing.
Yeah. Well, gigs are gone. Gigs are gone. That's a given. As far as the teaching side, I had to suddenly learn how to use. I ended up using Skype just because it seemed like it was the easiest one to get started with. It was all sort of new to me, and at some point, maybe later, I'll talk about the ups and downs of that. But still, we had to arrange that and then start arranging times for the students to meet me one-on-one on Skype. And we kind of soldiered on through that. Did the last maybe 4 or 5 lessons of the semester that way. And just luckily, I was a little bit ahead of schedule with lessons just because I had a couple of health issues, or a health issue that took me out for a little while. So luckily it didn't take me away from teaching too much. It took me out from the Philharmonic. So somewhere in there, I got ahead on the lessons with the idea that just in case that, I wanted to be able to get away for the CPO vacation week, things like that. So I said, so that meant we had more of the live lessons in already. So that was a help with that.
It's fortunate, for sure. Dave, how about you? What does that look like?
Well, for me, like Jim said, the gigs are gone. I mean, I play with a number of different ensembles, largely in the jazz vein, like Primetime Big Band, and do a lot of stuff with various different rock and blues artists around town. And like all of a sudden, all the bookings, of course, vaporized. One of the things that's been really interesting about this is it's kind of, I found it's because I'm not a social media user. I have not historically been using things such as Facebook or Instagram or any of those things. And I still haven't really gotten onto that bandwagon. But I find that people are really starting to reach out to each other more. So I'm hearing a lot more from my sort of non-classical musicians with the sharing of, just to try and keep people's spirits up, I guess, trying to, the sharing of humor. And, thank God for the, the wonderful resources on YouTube musically, both, of a serious nature and of a comedic nature. People are coming out of the woodwork, putting together comedic projects, doing funny things. There was one that Jim recently sent around of a bolero mock-up. And so I'm getting a lot of that from various people all over the place, where normally, I guess a lot of people have more time on their hands, and if you don't laugh in a situation like this, you just end up getting really depressed and crying a lot. So, you have to keep your spirits up. So that's sort of been an interesting thing in terms of connecting with other musicians. I'm hearing socially from musicians outside of my normal Calgary Philharmonic realm, on a more regular basis, just because of everyone being without work and without gigs and stuff. I don't do a lot of private teaching. I've been very busy as a clinician doing sectionals with school groups and stuff. Unfortunately, that has not transitioned to an online reality. Clinics and things, because essentially the school band programs have ceased to operate. So that really has left a lot of other openings, that in my schedule that normally were full with coaching young students. So occasionally I'll field through an email or something, some questions about something in the occasional either FaceTime or Skype meeting to just talk about some musical issues. But the pedagogical side of my work, unlike Jim, where he has a more organized structure with the university, the pedagogical side of my activity has pretty much ceased to exist
Right.
for the time being. We're all hoping that the new normal comes back.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, it sure has changed for all of us. So, all right. Well, maybe we could talk a little bit to what kinds of things have transpired through this. Then, have there been ways that practicing or prepping in different ways, even though there's sort of an unknown as to when halls will be open for larger gatherings? We don't know that, but what is maybe sort of that day-to-day or prepping, or has anything evolved out of this that has been, dare I say, a bit of a silver lining perhaps too?
Sure. Well, I'll go first here. Same as Dave, I've been hearing from people, former colleagues, people in different cities. I think a lot of people are sort of reaching out, whether by phone or Skype or email or whatever. That part of it's kind of good, that you catch up with people. You discuss. There's this great equalizer that everybody's in this boat right now. The other thing is, on one of the online trombone chats, somebody started a thread on this, and I think it's really true. He was just talking about enjoying practicing. Like the first little while, like I think like everybody else, you're kind of hit hard. You don't know what to do, and then you almost feel a little bit depressed to do. You kind of half-heartedly practice. And then suddenly I realized that I don't have anything that like actually needs preparing. And so much of your practice, when you play in an orchestra, is like, what are you doing next week kind of thing, and getting ready for that sort of thing. And suddenly to be free to practice sort of what I want to practice, and to just maybe like I'm taking stock of my own playing and saying, I haven't really practiced A or B as much as I should in the last little while. And maybe it's time to just like get back to basics on things. I've been enjoying like going back to etude books I used in school, things like that. And another thing I've been enjoying is there are a few things out there now that have accompaniments to them. Like for instance, there's Rochu accompaniments for the Rochu etudes on CD. And so, one of the things you miss is playing with other people, and just that, the pitch and time things that come from playing in an ensemble. So little things like that. I discovered another one, a guy did a bunch of sort of Arbenz chord and arpeggio and scale etudes, again with some recorded accompaniment. And Michael Davis, there's a couple of those warm-ups with us, and so things like that. So you're staying, you're getting some other feedback when you're playing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a good idea to do that all the time. You sometimes want to go back to your regular way because you can get kind of stiff, always trying to fit that. But it's still it's a nice plus to just bring another element into your playing. And one thing I discovered that was kind of fun, I discovered a CD in the midst of my collection I'd completely forgotten about, called The Essential Rochut. And it's a bunch of top players. This person recorded them playing Rochut etudes. And there's a couple of bass trombone players, Doug Yo, who used to be in the Boston Symphony, and John Rojak, who was a friend of mine from school. We were colleagues in school. And so I especially enjoy, it's not an ideal thing because there's no click or lead in or whatever. So you kind of have to leave out the first phrase and join in. But playing the written octave, because the bass trombones, of course, are playing the lower octave. So I'm playing duets with my friend John.
Fantastic.
And, and it's just kind of fun. And it just means it's a way of putting some more interest in things and trying to get back to that feeling you had practicing when you were in school. And, it seemed like there weren't as many goals that you had to hit by next week kind of thing.
Right. Brilliant. That's great. Dave, how about you? Thread.
Well, a lot of similar things to what Jim was saying. A lot of what we do in our practice as busy professional musicians is preparing for things, and of course, with nothing imminent, nothing coming up to have to work on, it opens up the possibility of working on things that are just fun to play. I'm fortunate in that there are a couple of professional musicians here in the house I'm in. One is my wife Trish, who plays in the CPO, and so she's a double bass player, and we've explored playing some duets. And I also like to, even though my primary focus is being a classical bass trombonist, I also like to play some jazz trombone. As I mentioned, I'm in a big band where I play tenor trombone, and I do a lot of things in the jazz and rock realm. But another professional musician who's not part of my family, but actually moved in essentially as a tenant in our basement, is a well-known local pianist named Willie Jewson, who's actually a very, very skilled jazz and commercial player. So since we're we're in the same household, so we're all relying on each other to stay healthy, but it enables us to be in the same room and find some time to work on my jazz playing with an actual pianist. So I'm fortunate in that way. Not everyone has a pianist of that caliber around that you can actually get together with and play live. I also find, one of the things that you're constantly dealing with as a working busy professional is fatigue. We have so many gigs. Sometimes I'll have a morning rehearsal, I'll have an afternoon show with a big band or something, and then play a concert again that night. And you're sort of trying to figure out how to play your best on tired chops. I haven't experienced that since mid-March. I choose to, there's an old saying amongst many good teachers, and I certainly had teachers say it to me, when you're practicing, always practice feeling good. Always practice doing the right thing, keeping your throat relaxed and open, your airway flowing, no pressure, no excessive pressure on the chops, and doing everything right, always aiming for the best possible use of your fundamentals. But when you get to the gig, you do what you got to do to get the notes. And that's a reality for us. We find if we're on a gig and we got to hit a high D in some piece on a tenor trombone, you do what you have to do, which sometimes isn't the most relaxed approach to playing, but you get it done. In this reality of the quarantine, I never actually get tired. And I'm finding that it's improving my endurance because I'm always working to the point of where it just starts to feel tired, and then I take a break and I have other things I have to do. So it's sort of, for me, it's reinforcing playing with good fundamentals, which I hope then translate to better endurance and better consistent use of fundamentals on those days when I am facing a lot of hours on the horn. So I think that that will be a good thing. I'm also, in terms of playing with other people, I've been working a little bit on some Bob McChesney harmonic dexterity pieces where he provides rhythm section accompaniment, where I work on them on both bass trombone and on tuba, which is one of my doubles, which sort of gives me that feeling of like I'm playing with something and not just constantly playing in isolation. And I also I have a daughter in junior high who loves playing the trombone, and she's practicing every day. So, when I hear her practicing, some days when I'm getting busy with other things around the house, I start thinking, oh, that's a good reminder. I got this trombone thing I gotta keep. And then at a certain point in the day, we try and find a chance to play some good appropriate junior high level duets. And I found a nice book of classical duets. And we actually posted a couple of those on the virtual site. So finding lots of different ways of keeping it engaged and hopefully working in a positive direction, so that when we do get back to playing, I'll have become a better player for it.
Those are great tips and wonderful advantages of having such a musical family and tenants and such. Willie Juice, I think, plays at the Flames games, if I recall correctly, when they're playing.
Correct. Yes, he's well known in that, and of course, this is a very unusual world for him, because he's normally outside of the Flames, very busy with club dates and everything, and it's all dried up for him. We've been fortunate that we've had some financial support from the orchestra, but for freelance musicians, it's been a very tough time. Government supports have been something to keep the wolf from the door. Yeah. But I think part of what a lot of musicians are really having a hard time with is just the isolation artistically and not having that normal connection. The CPO, changing the subject a little bit, has done some isolation projects which have been really gratifying. I ended up covering multiple trombone parts because, for whatever reason, I think Jim was in the midst of some stuff that was some computer issues, and so I covered some about 8 bars of trombone in Nimrod, which is on YouTube, and then we did a Hockey Night in Canada thing, and there's also a Tom Jackson piece that I recently did. So you sort of feel like, even though you're not physically present playing with your colleagues, you're participating, and it's great that I have so many different outlets, so I still feel like I'm engaged as a player through this time. But obviously we all are looking forward to getting back to playing with our colleagues in all the realms.
Absolutely. Yeah, no kidding. That's but that's what it's a wonderful kind of anecdote there about that. And it's a different kind of playing, really, I think, when you're doing that kind of isolation playing, but that finished product is
following
wonderful.
a guide track, and you're engaged, but you're engaged with a machine, and it is
right.
I haven't had a lot of experience with that, so it's been a real learning curve, getting all this distance participation, distance recording going on that we've been doing.
Sure.
Yeah, this is kind of teaching me that I need to sort of ramp up my computer skills a little bit, and part of it is just a bit of older equipment, some error messages going off on it, whatever, that never really bothered me when all I did was email and said put in this and it's like click it later, kind of thing. And now it's like won't let me into the recording functions and things like that, because little things that you need to wait until things relax down a little bit. So basically I can get into an Apple store and say, give me a hand here, man.
Sure. Yeah. Now, on that same token, I mean, the devices are amazing for the technology right now, but at the same time, they can also be, weapons of mass distraction, right? There's all kinds of stuff you can spend time on. So maybe you could talk to that. Are there, perhaps old school tricks or things that have come to light that you've done in that time that work for, that have come back and are, really helpful at this day where you're buckling down and working on your instrument?
Well, couple things I've discovered. I mean, I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but at least it involves the devices. One is that with my teaching, one of the things I kind of insisted on after discovering that all of these, Skype in particular, but Zoom as well, they kind of come in and out a little bit, sometimes depending on your internet connection or whatever. And and just tone quality and stuff, it can be hard to tell what the student's doing. You know, it gives you that a little, you're still in contact with them in real time, but it's not ideal. So we started having them record things, at least for their exam thing. So for instance, for their jury exams, two of them that had juries recorded the jury.
Okay.
They played it live on Skype, but they
Right.
recorded and sent me a recording after. So, and which was great because it was a perfect example of the difference between the live Skype where you say, was that in time or not? Because the connection kind of went crazy. And you listen to the live recording, it's like, oh, they were good, you know, and you, or no, that reinforces what I was saying, you know, that maybe there was a mistake made. And one of them, the one that had a recital still to go, sent me his whole recital on recording. And again, that we didn't even bother doing a Skype for that because it just seemed like you want to really listen critically. Like normally there'd be a panel, several of us from the university there, 2 or 3 to you know, to grade him as a group. And they decided with the situation now, the teachers would just do it, just because it was too much hassle to try and figure out how to do that sort of thing remotely. So you know, I've learned that recording people is a good idea, and I think going on like next year, if this carries on into next year, or there's another wave of this or something like that, I'm going to make weekly recording sort of part of the deal, and hopefully I'll have my computer skills up a little bit, and I'm going to try and do a little bit of recording of myself, of just an etude here and there or something, some demonstration stuff, so that they're hearing things live that way as well. And well, not necessarily live, but I mean recorded live, and so they get that experience, and then maybe do some more group lessons where we just talk about elements of things, where you can hopefully share some recordings around and then talk about what was good and bad and what everybody should be looking for, you know. So little sort of master classes that way. And then the other thing, just since you mentioned YouTube, yes, it can definitely I know I can sit there in the evening sometime and click from one to the next, but I've found some really great things that people are putting out there now. I would mention Jim Markey from the Boston Symphony has a few things. He has a great one where he talks about the William Tell Overture, that how he you know, prepares that, and how he did prepare it, get it to where, believe me, when he plays it, it sounds pretty spectacular. And it's like, that's never been my favorite excerpt. And so I'm going to see if I can take his approach and you know, over the summer, and make it my favorite excerpt.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the main thing I would suggest to the students that are out there is, like, you know, search out some really good playing on YouTube, and really good instruction that's there. Obviously there's some bad stuff out there too, but you know, take this as a good time to kind of think of it like a Skype lesson for free with someone else, you know. And that's a pretty good use of the modern technology.
Absolutely. No, that's true. That reminds me, actually, you were mentioning Rochu and recordings, and Toby Oft from the Boston Symphony has a number of wonderful recordings, and the resources are plentiful and quite amazing that way.
Those are great. And the other thing I'd mention about that's kind of cool is that, I mean, Johannes Rochu was the principal of the Boston Symphony. So it's kind of a cool legacy thing that you know, 4 or 5 people later, someone is going through and recording these amazingly beautiful renditions of those. He's done them in Symphony Hall, and I think the main concert hall at New England Conservatory. So they're recorded in a beautiful space, and he just sounds fantastic.
Right.
A resource everyone should check out.
Totally. Yeah. So, maybe on the token of having your daughter in your household, Dave, who also plays the trombone, you mentioned that you recorded a couple of pieces, and of course, we were just saying too, recording is you're your own best teacher in those kind of senses, but also, wow, what a gift that she has to have her dad in the symphony and working with her like that. And we get to see you perform a couple of duets later virtually on those, but are there other things that come to mind? I mean, you've got the distinct advantage of having the live musicians. I think of, working with iReal Pro apps and such. And have you done, some recording also with your wife or with Willie or?
Yeah. Not yet. We may get to that, doing some recording. Mostly we're just kind of having fun with it and keeping ourselves like musically flexible and engaged, so that we don't like have our music our versatility get atrophied and not be able to work with real live musicians anymore. So just having that human element. And I mean, even at the level of playing with a junior high student, which I've probably spent more time playing with my daughter than any other junior high student in my life, obviously, because she's in her third year of that. And just even though her ensemble skills are obviously as any grade 9 kid, they're emerging, and her sense of time and pitch and all these things are emerging skills. But I find that it's reinforcing my own core skills as an ensemble player, just to work with her and help with phrase together, and we don't rehearse anything to death, but we just try and play through some nice melodies and have fun with it and try and make the phrasing as musical as we can, and trying to work on breathing together when appropriate, or staggering when appropriate, and sort of introducing these concepts. So, I think it's good. It's created a great learning curve for her to have that exposure, but also, for me to continue to exercise those ensemble skills, with even if when you're playing with someone at a junior high level, you still are reminded that there's give and take. You have to feel each other as there's ebb and flow in tempo, in any ensemble, professional or at the education, at the grade school level. So I think it's good for us both. And obviously as a trombonist, we're social animals. We love playing in ensembles. We love, playing in sections, whether it be in a big band or in the symphony or in a horn section in a rock band, where you might be the only bone player, but you're playing with a trumpet and a sax and whatever. And it's all about ensemble playing. I mean, I haven't done a solo recital. I guess one of the Slide into Springs, I've done some solo works, but my activity has been primarily ensemble playing. So that's like to say, that's the big loss in all of this. So keeping it going, I think it's been a blessing in both directions for Sophie and I to have each other to play with. So I'm at least, hey, I get to work with another trombonist in real time, live in the room, even if it is at the junior high level. It's still cool, and it's still rewarding and gratifying in its own way. And of course, whenever I play with Willie, it's always just a lot of fun. We don't take it too seriously. We're just like, hey, what tune do you want to do? Let's start laying down changes, and we go and we trade solos, and then we start trading stuff. If we had a drummer in the house, and if my wife would decide, and now that she's in her 50s, I'd say it's not going to happen. But if she ever decided to be a
Right.
do the walking bass thing, but I got to write it out if she's going to do it. And the real book's got nothing but slashes, and it's just not the bag. You know, she's a fantastic classical bassist, but it's not her bag to do the jazz thing. But if, you know, it'd be cool if I could talk her into it. You know, never know. Maybe one day.
That's right. You know, those are beautiful anecdotes. I just think that that's also one of the things of making the time that we have here the best you can, and having even just you're having a family time at the same time as artistry, and that's a really cool thing. So thanks for that.
It's
You know what Dave just said too about you know, ensemble playing with a live person. I just jump on that as well, and that's kind of what I was saying before, but maybe to expound on a little bit, that it is great to play some of these things that there are like recorded accompaniments to the Bordogni etudes or whatever, and things like that out there, but it's a very stiff experience. It's not very musical, and even the Arbin stuff, which you don't tend to think of as musical, I find that you're locked into somebody's tempo. You got to start the next one like right in time. There's no time to sort of stop and like take a good breath or whatever, and you find yourself playing kind of stiff, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, because that also gets you used to the performance experience that we've all had, where the conductor's tempo is not what we expected, or they jumped on that next phrase and, you know, maybe rushed a little bit, or a colleague even did or something, you know, whatever, that suddenly, or your internal rhythm was wrong, which is the other possibility, that perhaps you were behind and not, you know, gee, a trombone player behind, that never happens. but all of a sudden, you know, so it is nice that is something you miss a little bit if you don't have the live interaction there. That the fact that, you know, you make adjustments. Likewise, pitch. I mean, it's great to sit there and work on your pitch. Everyone should be trying to play at A440 and, you know, tune the thirds and the sevenths appropriately and all that. But there's nothing like the live experience, and it may be a couple of cents different than what it truly is, you know, if you were to get the tuner to go straight up like this. But, you know, you're fitting with a bunch of other people, and you're listening and using your ears, and you're adapting and adjusting. And that, you know, it's the part that it's the part I'm going to enjoy the most when we get back to it. And it's funny how sometimes, you know, at the times when it's maybe not perfect, we can be sitting there and we can be kind of annoyed about it. I don't know if I'll ever be quite as annoyed again, because I'm going to enjoy the idea of playing with other people and having that chance to, you know, see if you can't just make it work.
The living organic nature of ensemble playing, you know, with all its inherent flaws sometimes, is really the joy of music making. You know,
it's communication. It's a great form of communication, and that's maybe the hardest part about this for everyone, is that.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. I hear you completely. I mean, we've put together a couple of quartets with our trombone quartet to present after this discussion this afternoon, and it was a neat experience. It is great practice recording yourself, but that sense of it being somewhat sterile or not, you know, live and together. Dave, you would have had that for sure in the Nimrod experience to some degree. And
you know, when you're playing a piece like that is you know, so fluid and emotive, and you're playing it with a click track and you know, a conductor on a screen instead of in the room that people are breathing with. But it's actually remarkable how well it comes across, because when you get that many people participating, there is that human element of the slight time variations and pitch variations that's you know, that just happen to enrich, for example, you know, a string section by having all those different vibratos out of phase with one another. It still can come together, but you know, the experience of creating it is very sterile. You know, as you're recording your track, and you know, one of the worst things to do is to actually listen back to your track after, because you know, without hearing it in the greater picture, you just hear this monophonic track of you playing. It sounds just like, whoa, that's dull. But when it all comes together, and that, you know, that magic is there in the end result, but in the process of creating it, it's very different. Like I say, it's a real steep learning curve to sort of get to be okay with what you're doing in those situations, right? When you hear your monophonic track come back, and nothing else with it, you know, not even the backing track or the click or anything. You think, okay, that sounds really bad, but let's hope it all works out.
Yeah, totally.
You know, when we stopped, Dave was mentioning, you know, when we went out on basically we're at least initially given our marching orders from the CPO. That was we were playing the Harry Potter movie, and you know, when we play those things with the orchestra, one of the things you notice is that even when they have a click track, the click track's not steady, because a lot of that was recorded, like the click track sort of added afterwards. Some of it's recorded with the conductor following action on the flick, and you know, it makes it very hard to reproduce that, because there's basically someone else's rubato going on there that the orchestra has to sort of fit into, and it you know, and we get pretty close to it, I think, you know, especially as we keep doing these things, you know, but again, it's nothing compared to that original situation when you're sitting there and you're playing this emotive section of music, and you know, everyone is reacting to one another, and there's this feeling of community, you know, in making that happen. And as soon as you introduce like a click track or metronome or something like that to it, it loses something. It has to, you know. At the same time, those things are still valuable for learning to just get your basic time together and all that too. We obviously have to learn that. So.
Sure. Yeah, no, I went to the Harry Potter movie last year actually with my kids, and it was wonderful. It was really well done, but I can totally understand what you're talking about. I mean, that it does take away an element with that click track for sure.
Yeah.
So have there been experiences or thoughts around how to bring music in the community, perhaps in any kind of way? I know that there's been a few cities that have talked about and done, you know, 7 p.m. out on your front step, making music to thank the frontline workers and such. Have any of those kind of things come through the grapevine, or has there been anything maybe through the symphony that has been put out there as far as resources or an outlet? Or
It's funny you say that, because I've been thinking about that a little bit. My neighbors, a rather confusing email went out that one night they went out at 7 o'clock to applaud, but the email had 2 different times in it. So I went out at 8:30. I said, I don't see anybody else out here. So
You weren't by yourself.
yeah. However, I really like that idea. And I was thinking, you know, of maybe seeing if I could organize that again in my neighborhood, and maybe I'd play O Canada or something like that. Just something that would, you know, be fitting for the experience. And I, you know, I might put that out there on the CPO the sites and our email chain and things like that. That maybe that's something for people to organize in their communities. I do know, because I'm on the CPO programming committee. This is my second experience with Zoom. The first one was this week for a programming meeting, and they are trying to figure out some more ways to do some more online type of things with small groups and things like that. I don't want to give anything away that I don't know how much of that stuff is still proprietary, and you know how much is supposed to go out, but they are trying to do that. And Dave, I'll do this in front of everybody here, that I was thinking that it'd be kind of fun for us if we're all back at some point, maybe record a few low brass things. I've discovered I have a couple of low brass quartets that would use tuba on the bottom part that, you know, yeah, we could do some things like that, and just get some things out there. And I would just encourage everybody that's watching this today to particularly if it can be dedicated to the first responders, things like that, or just as some sort of community project. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it would be kind of a neat thing to even a simple thing around playing on the front step, even to commemorate or to as a thank you to first responders, and for our purposes right here and now, it's that International Trombone Week, even whether it's any kind of etude or piece and somebody's thinking about, but that would be kind of neat, But that makes a lot of sense. That would be very cool. And certainly the resources of hearing you play and having some low brass recording and content out there sounds wonderful to us. I know, speaking of a few online resources that have come to par recently, I know the Catholic School Board actually had Adam Zinatelli on for just an interview this last Wednesday, I believe, and they're bringing a couple of orchestral musicians, I think, every week to just talk and opening that up, and that's great. I think that is one of the neat things that's come out of some of this that's happened. So.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit careful about what goes out there, because obviously you want to represent things well.
Of course.
I remember, I'll just tell a quick story. I remember a guy that was sort of hanging around New York, had finished his degree elsewhere and was hanging out and didn't have much work around the time I was finishing school. And busking, on the street corner used to be popular, but he didn't even have friends to busk with. So he would know there was a trombone audition coming up, and he would go out and practice his excerpts out on the street and hope to make his rent money from that. He said, yeah, they like Bolero.
That's right. Counting the 80 bars in between.
Anyway, I don't know that that's necessarily something that represents the instrument as well as actually getting together with a few colleagues and putting together something that sounds good and all that. But no matter what, I'm also at this stage, I'm enjoying, as Dave was talking about before about playing with his daughter, people getting out there and sincerely performing at the level they're at, and putting their all into it. There's a lot that's good about that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. I want to say thank you for being here today and be willing to jump online and give this a go. This is kind of all our first go at live online, and being able to make something out of the times we're in, and being able to contribute to the community and whatnot. I know we certainly were saddened to have to slide into spring this year. This would have been our 7th annual event, and we have always enjoyed hearing what you have to bring, as well as perform in the evening. And we tried to put together a few things for after this session to be able to look at on the Facebook page or our new YouTube channel. We've got, I think, 5 or 6 videos actually. So it'll be, it's certainly not concert length, but about 20 minutes of material for people to kind of scroll through and see, and look forward to seeing Dave with your daughter, Sophie. And also we've got some contributions from the region. So it's great. But this has been wonderful. Thanks so much. And
thank you for taking the time to acknowledge the day and the fact that we, an event that, we trombonists look forward to every year.
Right.
And rather than just let it go by without any acknowledgement of it, I think this was a great idea to just, communicate. And I wore my Slide into Spring shirt to one of them in one of the years, just to commemorate the day and sort of, feel like we're still connected as a community, even if we can't physically get together and and do what we normally do, which has really become a fantastic annual event that we're all, really proud and happy to be a part of at all levels of trombone playing in this wonderful community. And seeing the numbers that we've been getting has been so encouraging in the last few years. So let's hope this pandemic runs its course and people can get back into an even bigger and better event next year.
And
Agreed.
thanks from me as well, Nathan. Like you do a bang up job every year, and particularly this year. I'm here socially distanced from you in another part of Eberhard. Enabled, thanks, you enabled this to happen. I think I might turn one of my old slide into spring t-shirts into a face mask.
Yeah, that's great. That's right. Well, they're hard to come by, so.
But thank you, Nathan. Great job.
Absolutely wonderful to see you. Everyone stay well, stay healthy, continue enjoying playing, and we'll continue to be in touch.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.